Will you certify the election results? Do you plan to object, or will you accept the results regardless of who wins the election?
So, Kaitlan, I got to say, I think that's actually a ridiculous question.
It's a yes or no question.
No, it's not. Have you ever asked a Democrat that?
Of course.
Welcome back to Tracking That, a channel where we try to track what liberals are saying but end up not being able to as usual. Will you accept the election results of 2024? Is the question every journalist is asking a Republican whenever they get an interview with them. And not only is it a very annoying question because frankly no one cares, not even Democrats at this point, about January 6th or election denial, but it's just a misleading question because what they're trying to get out of them is that they won't accept election results even if Trump loses, and it will be January 6 2.0. You know how the media just loves covering January 6th. But the harsh reality of why we don't answer the question with just a yes, we'll accept the results answer is that further elaboration is needed. You know, we're not going to accept results that are fraudulent, obviously. They also try to back Republicans in a corner when they say there was voter fraud, and then a Democrat would respond, no, there was no voter fraud. That's not true. There were multiple lawsuits and recounts that there's no evidence. Well, I hate to debunk this claim because this was the most unfair election in our country's history, the 2020 election. A poll by the Heartland Institute, a poll Democrats definitely don't cite ever, is that 1 in 5 voters admitted to participating in at least one kind of voter fraud, including filling out a ballot for someone else, voting in a state where they were no longer a permanent resident, signing a ballot on behalf of someone, getting offered to get paid to vote, knowing a friend, family member, coworker, or other acquaintance who was admitted that he or she cast a mail-in ballot in 2020 in a state other than his or her state of permanent residence. All things that would align with mail-in ballots. So the harsh reality of the 2020 election is that mail-in ballots should have been illegal because this was just one survey and it had equal parts Republicans and Democrats, and not to mention clips like this on the internet of people ripping up Trump ballots, or Georgia not being able to find 380,000 photos of ballots.
Those are from the recount, but we have no ballot images for 380,761 ballots from Election Day, correct?
I also have a very important side note. This is a 23, nearly 24-minute video of the compilation of Democrats denying election results. This is not new. They want to make Trump be like the OG election denier, but the original election denier is Hillary Clinton, and that's just the harsh reality. But anyways, that's beside the point. In this video, Kaitlan Collins, yes, her again, the one that proved no Democrat should ever do a town hall with Trump again because he's too good, and also she's a full-time professional brain cell reducer, tried to ask Ted Cruz on whether he'd accept the results regardless of what happens. Well, she used the term free and fair election, and it turned into a massive lecture, you know, by Ted Cruz, with King Collins throwing a hissy fit because she didn't come up to the interview prepared.
For the election, you were the first senator to object to the votes. Mm-hmm. In 2024, will you certify the election results? Do you plan to object, or will you accept the results regardless of who wins the election?
So, Kaitlan, I got to say, I think that's actually a ridiculous question.
It's a yes or no question, though.
No, it's not. Let me explain why it's a ridiculous question. It's not a question. You've ever asked a Democrat that?
Of course.
What Democrat?
But what Democrats?
Hold on a second. What Democrats challenge it?
What Democrats? I know. I've been down this road many times.
But
no Democrat. You cannot compare the two situations. We have talked about that. We've seen the audio of that when they protested on the Senate floor.
But hold on a second.
But has you ever had a sitting president who refused to facilitate the peaceful transition of power, refused to acknowledge that his successor won the presidency?
So, A, we did have a peaceful transfer of power. I was there on January 20th. I was there on the swearing in.
Barely.
B, if you look at in 2000, Democrats went to the Senate, or 2001, Democrats went to the Senate floor and objected to George W. Bush. In 2004, they went and objected.
And what did the president do?
In 2016, Democrats went and objected to Donald Trump. And so... Look,
and what happened in 2016? Because I remember a guy named Joe Biden was vice president, and he went to the Senate floor and certified the votes.
So do you want...
Am I wrong?
So you're asking, will you promise no matter what to agree an election is illegitimate regardless of what happens? And that would be an absurd thing to claim. Like, we have an entire election law system that people challenge elections. Elections get overturned. Voter fraud gets proven. That happens all the time. And the media engages in this weird game post Donald Trump that you insist no voter fraud has ever existed, why does every state have laws in place to challenge voter fraud if it occurs?
The media
Why do you have
doesn't-
election challenges?
This isn't a game. There was no
It is a
widespread
game.
voter fraud.
You only ask Republicans that. You
Because
ask,
it was Republicans who tried to block the transition of power. You have to acknowledge that.
So
we've never seen it on a scale of what happened in 2020, and we've never seen the president refuse. He wouldn't even let Joe Biden get classified briefings at the beginning. I recall that.
So
my question for you again, free and fair election, will you accept the results regardless of who wins?
Look, if the Democrats win, I will accept the result, but I'm not going to ignore fraud
But was there
regardless
fraud
of what
in
happens.
2020?
Of course there was fraud in
No,
2020.
there wasn't, and you still objected.
You know for a fact there was zero voter fraud. Really? What's your basis for that? Show me your evidence.
We've spoken with Governor Kemp. They did 3 hand recounts in the state of Georgia. The director of CISA said that it was the safest, most legitimate election.
But
in
you're saying
United
zero
States
voter
history.
fraud occurred. That's what you just said.
Nothing that would have changed the outcome of that
Okay, but that's a
election.
different statement.
But no, it's not. Because if
yes,
it wouldn't
it
have
is.
changed
You said there was no voter fraud.
there was no voter fraud that would have changed the outcome of the election, and you know that, Senator.
So what I know is that when I stood on the Senate floor and objected, what I called for, I'll tell you, I wrestled with what to do in that circumstance. And the reason I wrestled with it is because I think there was significant voter fraud in 2020. And
you wanted the 10-day commission, I know, but was there voter fraud that would have changed the outcome of the election?
But do you know why I wanted a 10-day commission? Because I tried to look. I'm a Supreme Court litigator. I argue cases in front of the Supreme Court.
I know.
I tried to look through history and precedent, and the best precedent I could find was the election of 1876. 1876 was between Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden. And what happened there were serious allegations of voter fraud, and Congress didn't throw its hands up and say, you know what? CNN demanded that I accept the results no matter what, so ignore the fraud. I got to go. But hold on. What did Congress do in 1876?
How did the president handle it?
What did Congress do in 1876?
Senator, I have to know, you can't
I'm
answer
asking
yes
a
or
question.
no to this question.
I'm asking a question. What did Congress do in 1876?
You can't answer yes or no to this question. And Republicans,
can you answer my question? Why are you refusing to answer my question?
I'm conducting the interview with all due respect, Senator. And let me ask you, it's Republicans have twisted themselves in knots. It's just a yes or no question.
I'm not twisting myself. I'm answering your question. You just don't like my answer.
And what's your answer? Is it yes or is it no?
So in 1876, what Congress did is it appointed an election commission. It consisted of 15 people. 5 House members, 5 senators, 5 Supreme Court justices. The Election Commission was charged with studying the evidence and making a determination of what voter fraud occurred, and that determined the winner. And what I called for in 2020 was to do the same thing, appoint an election commission, and 11 senators joined me.
Senator, with all due respect, after it had been thrown out of many courts, after the Attorney General Bill Barr, because there was no basis for those court cases.
No, so that's actually
Senator,
not.
with all due respect,
you asked me a question. Do you want me to answer it?
And you didn't answer the question.
Yes, I did.
Court cases were thrown out.
Hold on a second.
The Attorney General said there was no widespread fraud. You're not clearly answering the question. I want to thank you for that.
What question am I not? I'm answering every question. I think the country would have been a lot better off with a determination of what evidence of voter fraud there was that occurred, and instead the media didn't want to hear it and insists voter fraud never occurs. You ought to go back and look at the Carter-Baker Commission.
It was the Attorney General, and my question was about
it was the media. It was CNN that relentlessly pushed that propaganda. And by the way, never holds.
That there was no widespread fraud in the election?
That voter fraud doesn't exist, and anyone who says it does is wearing a tinfoil hat. That is propaganda. And by the way, you never asked Hillary Clinton this. You never asked Stacey Abrams this. You never asked Al Gore this.
With all due respect,
and every
Senator,
one of them said the Republicans who won were illegitimate.
I haven't had any of them on my show. We'll talk to them. But I don't remember there being a president who was refusing to turn over the transition of power and facilitate it.
And Trump didn't either. Joe Biden became president.
My question was about 2024. You did not answer it.
Let me say a final point for you. You said they haven't come.
Thank you very much, Senator Ted Cruz.
My opponent, Colin Allred, hasn't either. He ought to come to your show.
Senator Ted Cruz, no answer to that question. Thank you very much.
This wasn't even an interview. It was a failed interrogation. Like, honestly, how annoying could she get? He answered the question in like 100 different ways. But that's the tactics Democrats use when they try to make a complicated question into a yes or no answer. Knowing Republicans aren't going to answer yes or no, then make it seem like he didn't answer the question. I think the best way we can answer questions like that, where they try to make it yes or no, is by saying, yes, I'll accept the results if it's free, fair, and no fraud. Free, fair, no fraud. Free, fair, no fraud. Free, fair, no fraud. And we'll just annoy the hell out of them. And then they'll argue about the fraud part, and then we'll just counter saying, oh, we want voter ID, you know, and then they'll say, oh, voter ID is racist. And then I'll be like, oh, why? Because you think black people are too stupid to be able to figure out how to vote? You know, you got to flip the script on them and just kind of really piss them off in that way. That's just the tactic that we have to use. You know, I'll give you another example. Abortion. If I want to piss off a Democrat by, you know, saying abortion is murder and stuff, you know, they'll obviously use the tactic that it's a female's right to choose and yada, yada, yada. And then I'll just be like, oh, wait, but all abortion clinics are in minority neighborhoods. You know, they target the majority of African Americans. Are you a part of the KKK? I mean, because you just want to kill black babies. You know, you have to flip the script on Democrats nowadays. But anyway, guys, that's all I have for today's video. Most of you probably didn't even watch through this whole thing because, you know, I mean, I lost enough brain cells just watching it.